What's going on, guys? It's Bromley. We're at Empire Barbell. And today I want to go over some programming methodology. Now, this is a way that I visualize my programming. It keeps everything nice and tidy. I have this kind of set structure that I follow, and it really funnels in all of my ideas into kind of a cohesive process that is very predictable, very reliable. Now, I'm laying things out this way, one, to give you insight into how I operate and how I program things, but also because I feel like these principles have the most convergence with other systems. So you might see these principles reflected in other sports training methodologies for, field sports, whether it's track and field, whether it's single sports like swimming, running, jumping, whether it's, more team sports, football, rugby, lacrosse, etc. You're also going to find these principles mirrored in other systems. So even if they aren't mapped out in a kind of this, linearly blocked out methodology, there's some fringe system, Bulgarian system or, West Side or whatever. You're still going to see elements of these principles reflected in that. So understanding how this stuff works is going to give you a better ability to kind of critique other systems, understand what works, what you can kind of take, what you can throw away. And that's going to make you better at picking this stuff apart, making good training decisions. So that's what we're about. So this is the strong funnel. Now what we're looking at is individual training sessions compiled in a week, and those weeks are blocked together. They always kind of end with a period of rest or some type of reset where you kind of let yourself recover from the work you did and then pick up where you left off. And these blocks start from very broad and varied. The closer you get to contest day, even if it's not contest day, even if it's a test day, even if this is so far out from a potential contest that, you're just having this as its own cycle where you're going to finish with a peak, get some numbers, and then reset. The idea is the further you are away from test day, be it a contest or not, the more broad and varied your work is going to be. Now that means exercise selection, definitely, but it also means rep ranges. If you're going into a 1 rep max, it's okay to be doing 8s, 12s, even 15s up here. You're trying to lay the groundwork as far as muscular size goes, as far as conditioning and work capacity goes, and you want to be really rounding out weaknesses. Okay, that's what that block exists for. As we go down the list, you're going to get a little more focus, so you'll start to strip away some fluff. Maybe you'll cut down on your accessory work. If you had some isolation exercises, maybe those go on the back burner, and you're going to slowly start to switch over to modes of training that are more specific to the angle. And then by the time you get to this is the last real competitive contest week. This is going to be almost entirely specific, both in the exercise selection and the rep ranges you're going to be working in. Things typically get heavier, volume gets cut way down, and as you start to push the envelope towards the end, then finally you go into your taper, and then you rest up contest week to put up a big performance on the platform. So as far as structuring these weeks go, there's a lot of ways to run different progressions that will set you up for success as the weeks go on, but there's a couple themes I want you to follow. Again, conceptually, they're very important, and I don't think they're explicitly stated enough that people really get a good handle on what it means and how to apply it. So one is, I want you to notice this little color gradient I have going on. Associate the blue with kind of easy peasy. You're thinking of crisper reps. You're thinking of not really doing anything to failure. You're thinking of leaving a lot in the tank. It could be leaving reps in the tank on any individual set. It could be not doing so much work that you're really fried. The idea, no matter how you progress, is to start out with something a little short of your baseline and then slowly adapt into more and more work, okay? It's not the actual workout here that causes the adaptation. It's the progression that forces the adaptation. It's what you do week to week as they stack together. So you could keep the weight the same through the whole week in something like a step progression. And if you add sets each week, it is that accumulation of work that causes you to adapt. There's protocols that increase volume, decrease volume, and on. But I just want you to conceptualize, it's the whole mesocycle together, not any one individual training session that really causes you to grow. Western culture, we tend to think of one more rep. We tend to think of pushing the envelope. It's about the workout. What am I going to do right now that makes me stronger? And what that leads to is guys just beating themselves into the ground and hoping, crossing your fingers, hoping you get stronger next time. So that if I come in next week, all of a sudden, I'm 5% stronger, I move more weight. It doesn't work like that. So we start out a little bit easier. As the weeks go on, we get harder, okay? We always have this deload. We always have some type of reset scheduled in. So the idea is you get closer to that deload, you can really redline it right here because you have this breath of fresh air to look forward to where you can recover from that beat down. Whereas if you were to just go redline, 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 that's not sustainable, okay? You're gonna get eaten up, you're gonna stop progressing, probably gonna get injured. Either way, frustration will be on the horizon. So remember, ramp up, ramp up, ramp up, deload, rest, clear out. On the next block, we repeat, ramp up, ramp up, ramp up, deload. That deload is so important. Remember, it's where you rest, that's where you grow. So if we're keeping that in mind, we know that week one, we're not coming in to blow our wad. Okay, nothing's to failure. We're not doing so much work that we just absolutely obliterate ourselves. We're kind of easing into it. I like that, that truck on the dirt road analogy, right? Over here, we're on hard dirt and we're picking up speed. And as we get into the mud, things get stickier. The momentum we pick up here is gonna determine how far we get into the red, right? And the deload, that's where we back up. We're on hard surface again. Boom, we're running into the mud. So each time, how far you get into the mud is gonna be determined by how firm that ground is that you start on. Firm ground, again, crisp reps, okay? Easy recovery. You're talking about a solid foundation. Okay, not just obliterating yourself for the sake of it. So when I'm putting together these cycles, one thing you really have to think of, it's another thing that's not explicitly stated, is that the progression has to be outlined in a way that you are going to not have to guess that you're going to get stronger. Again, it's not just effort based, it's about a mathematical progression of sets and reps that guarantees progression, because mathematically you're going to be doing more work in some capacity as time goes on. That's what causes the adaptation. So you have a couple options. If we're looking at volume here, just think of the number of sets. That's the easy way to do it. So in the first couple weeks, you can either decrease sets or increase sets. You know, I've done blocks where I might start with 3 and then I go to 4 sets, 5, 6. So by the last week, I'm doing a ton of work, right? And that is really going to lead to a big shock to the system. The adaptation to the volume is what causes muscular growth. Sometimes I don't really like the idea of starting off with high volume because you're doing your highest volume workout before you're really conditioned to it. So it feels like you're leaving something on the table. So as the weeks go on, you get conditioned to that volume and you finish with the highest volume workout, and then you deload, you recover from all that work, and then you reset. So that's represented right here. That's an option. They're different flavors of training. Most typically you'll see something like, 5 sets of whatever down to 4 sets, down to 3, and then your heaviest workout has the lowest volume associated with it. That's very common. As we go down and we get closer to contest day, intensification is really important, meaning the percentage is climbing up, and that's what we're focused on. As the weeks go on, you're getting heavier, heavier, heavier. So with the last couple of blocks, we really put a big emphasis on starting high volume and making sure that last week we're at our heaviest and we're allowing for the most recovery. So as you get into contests, you're always gonna start higher volume, trickle down to lower volume, but you got a little more leeway up here. Now, as far as the percentage and the intensity goes, you're always going to be increasing intensity, no matter what. If strength is the goal, we're adapting to more loads. There isn't really a split where you're gonna start at a certain percentage and drop that as time goes on. If you're volumizing, if you're adding sets as time goes on, your ability to make weight jumps isn't going to be very high because you have two things that are increasing and they'll kind of run into each other. You can make bigger, more sweeping jumps in your percentage if you're decreasing the volume as time goes on. If you're increasing the volume, you just have to start back further and make smaller jumps as you go. So this is an example of step loading. So if the percentage stays the same through this whole block, let's say this whole block is 65%, then what I would be doing is I'd be adapting to more work by adding sets with 65%. But that's one option. Not a lot of people do that. Generally, intensity climbs up. So you have to pick your mode of progression ahead of time. And these wedges are just an easy way to visualize how am I progressing, what is the goal of this progression, and it allows you to kind of pinpoint, okay, what is this hardest workout gonna look like, and how can I structure that? So you should always kind of structure that ahead of time and work backwards as you're writing it out. So with this funnel, what do we have? We have a few things. We have, so broad and varied, right? So even in sports, if you're looking at things like football or soccer, if you're looking at runners and jumpers, the same thing applies farther out from contest season. The farther you are out, the more variety you're going to have to kind of make you a more well-rounded athlete, and the closer you get, the more specific it is. So that's one. Again, volume. As you get closer to game day, you're not going to be doing as much total work because you need to be recovered to be in optimal shape. So recovery is the big one. Again, volume dropping as time goes on. And then intensity goes up in the form of percentage, right? We get heavier, and I would say effort in these last couple of weeks is also going to be substantially higher. If we're doing less work overall, you better believe that each set that we do, each bit of work that we do is going to have to be more quality, which means each touch we give to the barbell is going to be more of an all-out effort. So I would say effort tends to go up as these blocks go on. So what do we call this? Is this in a sense, block periodization? I don't want you guys to get too hung up on the definitions because they tend to be very vague, very poorly defined, and they all have some elements of each other contained within them. There aren't any systems that aren't linear. You know, I mean, Louis Simmons claims West Side is non-linear, that everything just goes like this. It's always heavy and it's always high rep and it always has dynamic work. There's elements of linearity in West Side. If you're trying to add weight, that's linear. There's also elements of block periodization to it, because if you're going through discrete periods, like they do with, let's say, the dynamic work, where they go through these short waves, these 3-week wave cycles, okay, that's blocked off. We're blocking off into these discrete periods of training where we focus on one quality or one wave or one progression. So they're all mixed up. A good example, if we look at something that's purely linear, this is like a true blue old school linear program. We start high, 5 sets of 10, we move all the way down, eventually to triples, doubles, and singles, right? And you might see a lot of old school programs that kind of look like this. And, you know, maybe they take a deload in the middle, or they reset the weight. You know, maybe they'll go a few weeks and reset a little bit and build back up. Those are small points. The overarching point is we start again, we're very varied, a lot of sets, a lot of reps, a lot of volume, okay, lighter percentages, and we build up. So this is its own kind of funnel that tapers down to contest day. So what is the difference between something that's like, let's say, purely linear and something that counts as block periodization? I'm about to blow your minds right here. You know what the difference is? The difference is these two little lines right here that separate this into accumulation, transmutation, and realization. And there, boom, there you have it. That's block periodization right there. Now, usually you'll see a deload in here. Because it's blocked off, the idea is you get a little more leeway with what you do in each section. But the broad principle of accumulation phase, what are you doing? You're accumulating volume, accumulating fatigue. You're adapting specifically to that trait. You're carrying that on into the next phase. And when you see it that way, you're going to find that these systems, they look more similar than they look different, which means it's really petty and not really productive to kind of isolate yourself to one mode of training, okay? They all bleed into each other. They are all very loosely defined and separated from each other. So I don't really distinguish. I mean, if I'm starting broad and varied and I'm moving down to more specific, in my mind, that's a linear split, and that's how I refer to it. The fact that I segment it off, that's just helpful for me to kind of visualize how that applies as time goes on. So now that you have your big template, now that you understand how each week is supposed to progress in difficulty, how important these pre-planned periods of recovery are, and how that allows you to gun up and then reset, and then gun up again a little farther and reset. And then now we have this template to put that all into. So the next important thing is going to be, what exactly does your split look like? What does your progression look like? How do you pick those percentages? And that by itself is a whole different video. I'm going to cover that again pretty soon. But I just wanted to throw this up because I think this is going to be very helpful for a lot of you guys. This is exactly how I wrote my split, actually, to the week of how I'm preparing for the Arnold Amateur World Championships that are, I think, the first week of March. So I just finished week 1. I'm about 11 weeks out now, and I'm in this phase right here. And as time goes by, I'm following this exact pattern. So the next time I see you guys, we'll go over a few different options for actually how to run the progressions, what those options are, and what situations might be appropriate to do one or the other, and then kind of the rules you have to follow for each one. But I know this is a lot to take in. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of questions. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave it in the comment box. I'll do my best to give as thoughtful and as deep of a response I can get without writing 18 fucking paragraphs. So thanks for watching, guys. Again, questions, comments, leave them, and I'll get back to them ASAP. Until next time, this is Bromley at Empire Barbell. I'll see you.